So I wanted to talk to you today before it got dark here in St. Kitts. One of the biggest things that comes up a lot from people is when you go international, the things that you need to look for that are going to be roadblocks to you that can really screw your trip up. And a lot of times people end up having to just pick their bags up and then find another place. And there's a lot of things that you're going to run into, a lot of stress that you run into too when you go international, which I'm going to go with you today also. But one of the things that you need to do is when you go and you pick your place, I'm going to tell you some things that you need to look for before you start, making plans for your trip. First of all, I'd find a place that you like to live, okay? And take your spouse with you too. I see a lot of guys that end up trying to make decisions themselves without their spouse, and it just screws up everything. In fact, you might even want, if you got young kids, you might want to try to get input on them because they're going to be with you. It's actually a lot easier to do it if you've got young kids than once they get older. Once they get older, a lot of times they're in the U.S. or Canada, they might not want to move. So you need to look at a place that's pretty close to where they are if you're going to be seeing them, because you can be taking a lot of trips. And another thing too is if you've got stepkids, they can really put a hamper on everything. And what happens is the spouse, usually it's the wife, she's got kids from another marriage, and you end up, things get kind of stressed out, and then she has a tendency to blame you for you're the one that wanted to move. And now she wants to go back and see her kids. So it can be a pretty expensive trip. These are some things that you got to think about. I try to get a place that's fairly close to the country that you're living in, and don't make it on the other side of the world. It just makes it a lot harder. Another thing too is pick a place that's got really good tax laws. I would try to pick from the countries that have either territorial tax system, pure tax haven status, or something that has a non-dom type system where you can really control your taxes and get it pretty close to zero. Another problem you run into too is, and we've got those on our website. I mean, you can go on our YouTube channel and pull up all these videos we've got on different tax laws in different countries. But I'll tell you something else you need to look at is pick countries you can get the passport in, because you're going to find out when you go to a country, you get somebody in the compliance department that will tell you can do your type of business. This has happened to me in Panama. You get down there, you don't get anything in writing, and then you find out you can't do that type of business. I even asked them for something in writing in Panama. They said, you don't need it. And I took her advice. She was in the insurance department down there in Panama when I first moved there many, many years ago. This is like over 20 years ago. And that's the problem when you don't get something in writing from regulators. You could get down there and find out your whole business is really messed up. And another thing you got to find out, not just can you do that type of business, in that type of country that you're moving to, but are they going to require you to be a citizen to get involved with that country, that company that you're going to do? This can really throw a snag in your business. And what you'll find out is there's a lot of countries that you go to where you cannot do that business unless you are a citizen. Panama's got a real problem with that. They won't let you get into retail, insurance, real estate. Man, there's a myriad of type businesses you can't do in Panama. And not just Panama, there are other countries too like that. You've got to be actually a citizen, and it will take you 5 years to get the passport before you can apply for the passport. But it will take you about maybe 15 years, at least 10 or 15 years to actually get that passport in your hands, which means you can't do that type of business if it's a restricted type business because you won't have citizenship. And these are things that you really have to look at before you make that move. And I'll tell you something else too, it's very stressful. It's easier to do this if you're single, I'll be honest with you. If you're married, this is what I found out from my experience. Not getting a second passport and just living in the country you're at, that's not going to change your situation at all. And a lot of people do that. Most people actually do that. They actually don't, they'll get a passport here in St. Kitts, second passport pretty quick, but then they just stay where they're at. They kind of do it as an insurance policy. But if you're planning on uprooting your roots and moving, I mean, there's people that have literally thousands of dollars in antiques. They're family heirloom antiques that they don't want to move that stuff. There are other issues that you've got, or if you did move it, the cost factor in relocating all that stuff, and then you don't want to sell it. And then you don't have anybody maybe you want to give it to. Unless you've got grown kids, you can ditch them out that way. But the other things you run into too is when you do your business, a lot of people don't realize, but there's a lot of businesses that people do in the U.S. You can do them anywhere. I mean, it doesn't have to be the U.S. This is the thing that so many people get bogged down on. They don't realize that if they've got an internet type business where you're meeting people on the internet, you're crazy not to be going international, man. You could get your taxes to zero. It's crazy to be doing it in a high tax country. Now, if you're a U.S. citizen, U.S. resident, then you're going to have to. You can qualify for the foreign overseas exclusion. That's $130,000 for husband, $130,000 for wife. So it's $260,000 for this year, and that can save a lot. I mean, you can get your taxes to zero unless and you got a lot of write-offs on top of that. But I would be picking a country that will take your type of business that you want to do, that you can do it totally income tax free. It's crazy not to be looking and checking these things out and just write these ridiculously high checks to the revenue department each year, where you could be doing this from anywhere in the world with your business. It just blows my mind how people don't try to sit down and try to figure things out. But I'm going to tell you some of your biggest problems you run into. You need to involve your spouse on if you're married, you need to bring her in. I don't care if she works with you in the business or not. Because if you have a problem with your spouse, you could end up going through a divorce. I see a lot of people that go international, they end up going through divorces. And what happens is, I don't want to sound sexist when I say this, but what I found out is most of the people I deal with are high-income earners that are males that come to me. They're not females, okay? In fact, we have very, very few females that made a lot of money, that have high net worths, where they didn't. Almost all of them either inherited it or they married it and they split up with their husband. You just don't see it. I mean, it's out there, but it's real rare. Okay, so usually what it is the guy that's trying to get his taxes down low, and he's frustrated as hell with the amount of taxes he's got to pay. But then he's got to deal with the spouse because maybe she doesn't want to move, and then maybe she says, "Well, you go and I'll stay here." Then you got a real problem. That's a marriage that's pretty doomed right there. Okay, and so you got to get her sold on this, and even if you get her sold, the problem that you run into is when you relocate, when all crap starts, things start going perfect with you and her or whatever, she's going to blame you because you're the one that uprooted and moved her away from her children. If those are your stepchildren, you're the guy, and they're her kids, and now she's put all the blame on you, okay? Because you're the one that split her up from her children. And even if she's going back 2 or 3 times a year, that ain't enough, okay? And so this is what you're going to hear from her. And even if they're children that came from you and your wife, they're not stepchildren, they're blood children, then you can still have problems because she might want to be closer to the kids and see them more often, and they're grown and they didn't want to come because they got friends back in the States, their businesses are back there. They didn't want to take this international move like you did. Now when they're young, it's a lot easier to train them and teach them about taxes and stuff, and also get them interested in this new life that you're going to, then once they get grown and they're already in their own business. These are the things that you're going to face. They get pretty difficult. And if you don't try to get this and try to figure out how to make this work and blend in with your life, you could end up losing half your money in a divorce unless you got a real rock solid prenup agreement and get your assets asset protected really well. That's another thing that you should be doing. Whether you stay in the U.S. or Canada or wherever you're going to leave, that should be done right away. And you need to learn to do this early in life. If you're in your 20s now and you're looking at this, I don't care if you don't have much money saved up, you should have a prenup agreement. As soon as you get married, even if you're broke. This is the problem. So many people end up getting married, they make a fortune, but they were broke when they got married. And then what happens is they end up, usually it's the guy that goes out and does the saving, and he's the one that works so hard to try to make things work. And of course the female's working, she's raising the kids, but she can also work, and you can take care of the kids too. I mean, it's should be an equal type thing. But if it comes to a divorce, you're looking at, over 50% of the marriages end in divorce now. That means that there's over a 50% chance that you could lose close to half your assets if you go through a divorce. So you should be planning this long before you start building up assets, and don't learn the hard way, okay? I was fortunate. I was able to observe my sister and my brother, who both went through divorces. So, I got to see what they went through, so I got to learn real early. But a lot of people don't do that, and some of them are too afraid to ask their spouse to sign a prenup agreement, which is really stupid, because what's going to happen is later you're going to really, really regret it if you go through a divorce. But I'll tell you something, it is more stressful when you go international because the culture is different. If you pick a country, and this is what I tell people all the time, they don't listen to this, stick with a country that speaks your language. Don't be putting your spouse in a situation where she's got to learn a different language along with you, because remember, this might be your deal, not her deal. She's just going with you. But now you've put her in a situation where she's got to learn this new language. There's so many countries today that are English speaking where you can get your taxes to zero, and your life is so much easier when you don't have to blend in this new language. Now, if both of you know a second or third language and you're going to go to a country that speaks that language, that's different. But when you're throwing her, and it's not just her, you're going to put a lot of stress on yourself too, because what's going to happen is when you get in a situation where you have to translate everything, you waste so much time. It's just incredible. Just making a phone call on a utility bill or anything, trying to find someone that speaks English, it's not worth it. That's why I tell people to stick with countries where you already know the language fluently. And especially if you've already got a lot of assets built up, or you got a company and you're trying to go, so it's so much easier hiring people. If you go to an English-speaking country, hire people that can speak good English. And if you go to a country where the people usually don't speak good English, the ones that can, they usually want you to pay a premium price as an employee, because most people can't speak English maybe in that country, so you're really limited who you can hire, and that can really affect your business so much. But the first thing I would do is, when you get a business, make a business plan and a list on all these points I've just been over. Go to a country, you can get the passport in, If you can't get that passport, I would skip it. I'd go to another country and pick one that has a good visa, has really good visa-free travel. And I've given you choices before. I like countries that have, these are the things I look for, okay? Number one, make sure you can work in that country, okay? And you can work in that country and not have to pay any income tax, capital gains tax, estate tax, or inheritance tax. The other thing I would look for is make sure they allow dual citizenship, okay? Also make sure there's no requirement if you're a citizen to have to fight in some sort of war, okay, or join the military. That's something else you need to look at. Make sure you check with regulators before you move and get some sort of thing in writing that you can work in that type business, whether it's international, domestically, whatever you want to do, okay? And make sure you, if you're going to do something domestically, you should stick with a pure tax haven, because those countries don't have an income tax typically. If you're going to do business outside the country, then you can go with either a non-dom type country, one that doesn't have an income tax, like a pure tax haven, or you can actually go with a territorial tax system, okay? Every country in Central America, except for Mexico, has a territorial tax system, okay? Which means they only tax you on income that you make locally in that country. All right, if you make money outside the country, they will not tax that, okay? Even if you bring it back into the country. Now, non-dom country will tax you on remitted income. So if you make it outside the country, that's okay, as long as you don't bring it back in the country. Now, everything I'm telling you is assuming that you have broken your tax ties to the US, places like Canada, places that tax, like the US taxes based on residency, citizenship, and also if you stay in the country too long, which if you break any of those three, then you're taxed on your worldwide income, no matter whether you bring it in or not. It doesn't make any difference, okay? I'm assuming you've broken your tax ties from the US totally. You're not a US citizen, you're not a US resident. If you're a Canadian, you have broken those tax ties. Canada has an exit tax on your assets before you leave. It just depends on the country. Every country's got their, if they usually tax worldwide income, they have some sort of stipulations that you've got to do before you can break those tax laws. Make sure that you do that, okay? And then you're gonna have to look at all your gains. Like I got a guy that he got into Ethereum pretty early, and he ended up having to pay a huge capital gains tax. Millions and millions of dollars he had to pay in Canada before he left. So you got to decide too, do you want to be in that situation? Of course, if you stay there, you're going to have to eventually, if you cash it in, you're going to have to pay taxes on it anyway. Might as well get out of it before it gets too big. You know, that's the key, is the bigger it gets, the more taxes you pay. That's why I tell you, the sooner you do this, the better. Even if you don't have that much money, this is something you ought to be thinking about doing. So as your assets get bigger, you won't have enough assets to really have to worry about an exit tax to pay, or if it'll be well mitigated if you do this ahead of time, okay? And the things I'm telling you are things that you have to plan on when you go international. And again, you're crazy if you do not bring your wife in on this decision making. Even if you got a girlfriend and you think you're going to get married to her or have some sort of live-in common law relationship, you should be getting her involved. But you definitely should be getting your kids involved with this too, at least sharing what you're doing, so you don't go do this and then go back and, you know, spend all this money and then find out that your kids don't like it, they don't want you to do it, and you're going to listen to what they say, and then you've wasted so much time and money. You need to bring these facts out to your family when you do this, and especially your spouse. But it does make it more complicated if you marry somebody and you've got stepchildren from another marriage. It makes it even harder. That's probably the worst scenario that you'll run into. The easiest is if you're single, because you got nobody but yourself. You can do whatever you want to do. Makes life so much easier. But if you're in a marital type situation, then what I'm telling you is the things you ought to be looking to try to do and solve before you you start spending a lot of money and making international moves. And I've seen so many people go through a lot of hassles and headaches, divorce and everything from doing this. So you want to be looking at that. And also looking at places like, for instance, Central America. I don't like, the only two countries I really like in Central America, because they have a territorial tax system, but they also have, they allow dual citizenship to just about any country in the world, and that's Guatemala and El Salvador. Those two are real good for that. I'll tell you that some that are a lot better though, because you don't have to learn, because you will have to learn a second language if you get that passport in those countries. You have to learn Spanish, and it's not predictable when you'll get the passport either. I'm talking about residency by investment, not citizenship by investment. Some other countries, I'll tell you the ones I really like the very most, because they allow dual citizenship. They've got real good visa-free travel. They got really good tax laws. They got everything that I've mentioned to you before. And that's, I like places like Ireland. They've got really good tax exchange agreements with the U.S. and withholding taxes on dividends. The only thing I don't like, which I mentioned before with Ireland, is Ireland has a, they have an inheritance tax, which I hate, but you can get out, get the passport, get out before that kicks in, which is a 5-year period from the time you get residency, okay? And then it kicks in after that if you die. The other country I like even better that doesn't have an inheritance tax, it's got a non-dom system just like Ireland does, that taxes only a remittance income just like Ireland, is Barbados. Oh, they got a lot of visa-free travel. It's the #1 passport in the Caribbean. It beats out St. Kitts and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. St. Vincent and the Grenadines now has a better passport, visa-free travel goes. St. Vincent and Grenadines is better than St. Kitts now. Now, they don't have a fast track program there like St. Kitts does. They do have a local income tax. St. Kitts does not have that. And Antigua doesn't have a local income tax either. But these are some passports, residency by investment programs. Even St. Kitts has got a residency by investment program. If you're going to go with a residency by investment, though, I like St. Vincent and the Grenadines better because it's a 9-year period before you get to apply for the passport. St. Kitts is freaking 14 years. The other thing you got to look at too is Barbados is actually even better. They don't have an inheritance tax like Ireland's got, and they've got really good visa-free travel. And this is the thing you want to look at. And it only tax you on remittance basis. You only have to purchase a property there in Barbados, and a lot better visa-free travel than you're going to get from any of the Central American countries. Is comparable to Mexico, but Mexico taxes worldwide income if you live there. You want to avoid Mexico, and once you leave Mexico, man, there's all kinds of crap you got to do to de-tax yourself from there. I would not get residency there in Mexico and on a permanent basis where you're spending more than 183 days a year, because you're going to have all kinds of issues when you leave. And you're going to have issues even if you spend less than 183 days on reports that you're going to have to turn in to break your ties from there, okay? So my whole thing is I wouldn't go there to begin with. But those are some countries I would be looking at. I don't like the other Central American countries like Panama. I've mentioned in other videos why I don't like Panama. I don't like Costa Rica. You can look at the other videos I've put on there on the dual citizenship, having to pass the Spanish test. The big thing is the dual citizenship part with Panama and Costa Rica. They don't allow it. But these are some things that you got to think about, when you're looking at getting a residency set up. You've got to be looking at this. Also, folks, if you can do us a big favor, we do not monetize our channel. If you can do us a big favor and hit the subscribe button at the right of your screen right here, and you'll get new videos automatically as they come out. And also, if you like our videos, give us a thumbs up and share this video with your friends. And if you want to know more on how to legally get your income taxes to zero, we deal with over 100 different countries on getting residency, and we can help you on getting your taxes to zero, getting residency set up. Go to our website, www.citizenshipquickly.com, and just ask for some help. And I look forward to talking to you on the next video. Take care.